With Bitcoin, as much as I hear people say there's limited supply, guys, I can take a dump in a bag. It's the only bag of my feces in the entire world. Does it make it valuable?
That was financial guru Paul from the Everything Money YouTube channel comparing Bitcoin to a bag of his own shit. But is he pumping or is he dumping? In the Everything Money YouTube video titled What No One Wants to Tell You About the Scam Called Bitcoin, Paul makes his case as to why Bitcoin might be the biggest financial scam of our time. And unfortunately, it's been trending recently. So I'm here to break it down and explain why Paul is wrong on just about every point that he makes. So let's dive in and watch this video together.
But what if I told you that Bitcoin might actually be the biggest financial scam of our time? Here's the reality. Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, no earnings, no dividends. If you think it has intrinsic value, you are going to lose a lot of money in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not on Bitcoin, but on some other thing. So you might sit there and say, well, you've said that before. Everybody keeps saying that it keeps going up in value. That's what happens during hype. If Bitcoin feels familiar, it's because we've seen these speculative bubbles many times before.
So right out the gate, he's saying that Bitcoin is the biggest financial scam of our time. And his first argument to support his claim that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value is because it has no earnings and no dividends. And this just shows that he has a very poor understanding, not only of Bitcoin, but of value in general. When people talk about intrinsic value in the context of value investing, which is what Paul is doing here, what they're saying is that if a stock has a dividend of a certain amount, then it means that the intrinsic value of that stock would correspond to that number. But the thing is, you can't take the principles of value investing and apply them to other types of financial assets like money, which is exactly what Bitcoin is. Money doesn't have earnings and dividends. That's not what gives it value. Think about how much earnings the dollar has. None. How about gold? Also none. Bitcoin is the same way. So then how do people measure the value of money? Well, the scorecard is very different, but usually people measure the value of money based on a handful of different characteristics, namely its rarity and its acceptability. Another way of saying that is that it's measured based on its supply and demand. And with Bitcoin, it's the only hard-capped, limited supply money in the world. So its price is really just a function of its current supply divided by its demand. And its demand is a total number of people who want it.
It's all pretty straightforward.
And the reason why people want Bitcoin is because it scores very highly on a lot of the basic properties of money, including durability, divisibility, uniformity, portability, verifiability, scarcity, and acceptability. And why does it keep going up in value? Simple. It's better money, there's a very limited amount of it, and the people that understand it are in a race to get as much of it as they can. Obviously, Paul isn't one of those people.
But let's understand what an investment is. Because a lot of people say I'm investing in Bitcoin, and I always write immediately speculating in Bitcoin. And guys, there are other things that people speculate into that I've done. Artwork, baseball cards, these things are all speculative. Why? They don't create anything. They don't generate anything. But when you buy a stock of a company that's generating cash, if the market went away for that company tomorrow, you would still have access and a claim to the free cash flow in the bank account and the assets of the business.
So this is a very common thing that critics often say to people who put their money into Bitcoin. Most of the time, critics say that it's not really investing, and they say it in a really condescending way, usually to try to make themselves feel superior. And Paul looks like the perfect example of that here. But what he's really doing is showing that he doesn't understand the difference between speculating and investing. He actually plucked his definitions of speculating and investing from a Medium article, but according to all traditional definitions, investing has nothing to do with cash flows or earnings. There's actually two key differences between investing and speculating, and those differences are risk and time preference. Investing focuses on low risk, long time frame financial bets, and speculating focuses on high risk and short time frame financial bets. So if you've done your research and calculated that something is low risk, and you believe that you can reasonably expect to make a good return over the long run, then that's investing. To say it another way, the difference between investing and speculating has very little to do with the asset that you're betting on. Instead, it has everything to do with the way you're betting. This means that you can speculate or invest on any asset, including stocks, real estate, and Bitcoin. And let me tell you, if you take the time to really study Bitcoin, then it's almost impossible to come away with any other conclusion that over the long term, it's an asymmetrical long-term bet with very low relative risk and very high potential returns. So while Paul can stand on his high horse trying to demean Bitcoin by saying that it's only speculating, it doesn't change the fact that the price of Bitcoin has risen more than any other asset since its inception, and any neutral analysis shows that it's extremely likely to continue to produce outside gains in the future.
But let's take away the value of Bitcoin. How are you going to interact? How do you know what your Bitcoin is worth before you buy something? Supporters claim that Bitcoin could one day replace fiat currency or rival gold as a store of value, but there's no clear roadmap or economic foundation supporting these claims as of now. And people who try to say that, well, what about gold? Yeah, what about gold? Gold has thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evidence that it has other uses besides just a backing of currency.
Paul is just continuing on here, showing that he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Gold's usage as a currency and store of value has nothing to do with its industrial utility. The reason why gold became the standard for money over the past millennia is because it demonstrated different properties of money better than all of its competitors. That said, gold isn't perfect, and as technology evolved, the requirements for money changed. For example, portability in the digital age means that money needs to be able to be sent across the internet as easily as an email. And with gold, that's impossible. And as a result, society has developed new money and financial products that better fit into today's society. But these new innovations come with a lot of trade-offs. Specifically, with fiat money like dollars and euros, it allows governments to infinitely debase a currency. And it takes economic control away from normal economic participants and hands it to large and powerful institutions. So what does this mean in practice? Basically, it means that the value of your money keeps on decreasing. And it means that other people can control what you do with your money in multiple ways, including stopping you from sending funds to certain people or certain locations, and even freezing your accounts altogether. And this is where Bitcoin truly shines, because not only does Bitcoin improve on gold in that it is not only rare, but hard capped, it also improves on fiat currency in that it is fully peer-to-peer, meaning that no third parties get to have any control over what you do with your Bitcoin. Some people describe Bitcoin as having a Swiss bank account, but that comparison doesn't really do it justice. Having Bitcoin is more akin to being your own Swiss bank. Think about that.
That is fascinating.
So when Paul says that there's no clear roadmap on why Bitcoin could overtake gold, he's just wrong. The roadmap is that Bitcoin performs all the monetary functions of gold better than gold, and in a way that works in our modern digital ecosystem. And as more people figure that out, it's very likely that more and more people are going to want to become participants in the Bitcoin network. And based on Bitcoin's 15-year track record, people are figuring that out really quickly. Bitcoin has already reached a $2 trillion market cap, and it's continuing to grow at an exponential rate.
Why was Bitcoin created? It was created originally to keep transactions away from the government. Guys, do you think the government's ever going to allow that? If the US government ever thought that people were getting away with defrauding them by using Bitcoin, all the government has to do is say, Bitcoin's gone. It's done.
Paul thinking that the government can shut down Bitcoin is just more evidence that he really doesn't understand what he's talking about. The way Bitcoin works is that it's a protocol for exchanging value. And this idea can be difficult to grasp, so let's break it down, because once you understand it, then you'll begin to see why it's practically impossible to shut down. First, a protocol is simply an established set of rules or procedures to accomplish a particular task. And our lives are filled with different, very important protocols that we use every day. One protocol that we're both using right now is English. Yep, that's right. Languages are protocols, and they allow for robust communication. Think about it. In order to communicate in English, you have to follow an established set of rules and procedures that everyone else has to understand and follow also. There's a particular list of vocabulary that we have to use to articulate an idea. We have to structure our words in a specific way. We need to enunciate our words using proper phonetics, and we need to use our sentences within specific contexts in which they apply. And if we don't do all of these things, then the other people following the English protocol won't be able to understand us. And one of the things that makes protocols interesting is that they are incredibly difficult to stop. And this is because at their core, they're just open ideas that everyone has the ability to partake in. Just for fun, try and imagine how any government could ban English.
It's hard to imagine.
It's basically impossible. Sure, A government can write a law saying that English is illegal, and maybe even they might be able to stop people from speaking it in public within their borders. But the notion that any government could effectively stop English is just silly. If people want to speak English to communicate, they're gonna speak English. And the notion becomes even more laughable when you realize that protocols are borderless. Even if a government were to find a way to ban English in their country, there are still millions of people that speak English all around the world. So for most people, any particular country's ban just wouldn't matter. Bitcoin in this sense is a lot like English. It's an open protocol, available to everyone, and it's completely borderless. And every single day, there are millions of people participating in the Bitcoin network all around the world. The procedures of the Bitcoin protocol are just specific sets of math equations that any participant can follow. Additionally, from a purely technical standpoint, the Bitcoin network doesn't actually even require the internet to operate. If the situation ever required it, Bitcoin can run through radio and mesh networks. So in short, the idea of stopping Bitcoin or shutting it down is just very not realistic. And anyone like Paul who tries to scare people into believing that the government might shut it down, all they're really doing is exposing how little they understand Bitcoin in the first place.
But with Bitcoin, as much as I hear people say the fundamentals are there's limited supply. Guys, I can take a dump in a bag. It's the only bag of my feces in the entire world. Does it make it valuable? Not necessarily, because you have to have a use for that.
I really can't believe Paul just said that. I think he's trying to be funny, but it really just makes him look like a complete clown. Paul, if you're watching this, let me tell you, your shit will never be valuable. And in order to illustrate why, let's go back to this chart and compare Paul's shit to Bitcoin based on the different characteristics of money. First, is it limited? Actually, Paul's shit is less rare than he thinks. If it actually had any value, Paul could easily shit into a lot more bags, increasing the supply with every shit that he had to take. Next, is it durable? No. Shit is naturally biodegradable, and it would disintegrate over time. This means it's not a good store of value. Is it divisible? Kind of, but no one's going to want to break poop into smaller pieces. That's gross. Is it uniform? Also no. It could change depending on what Paul ate the day before. Is it portable? Not in the way that Bitcoin is. I can't send it over the web as easily as an email, and if I wanted to send it overseas, I think there's a good chance customs would stop it and throw it out at the border. So on portability, it also fails. Next, is it verifiable? Again, no. Nobody will be able to tell that it's Paul's poop over someone else's. That's pretty much impossible. And finally, and this is probably the most important one, is it acceptable? And again, the answer is a clear no. Paul, nobody wants your shit. It stinks. I can't believe I even had to explain why Paul's bag of poop will never be valuable like Bitcoin, but there it is. A complete breakdown of why Paul's poop makes terrible money.
The best part is when I hear crypto people say they just don't understand. I don't hear Warren Buffett saying that. I don't see Howard Marks saying that. I don't hear any of the smartest investors who have the track record of doing so great over long periods of time. But when I see on Twitter, oh, they just don't understand. What do we understand? That every investment's the present value of all future cash flows and Bitcoin has no cash flow.
Paul, whenever somebody tells you that you just don't understand Bitcoin, I can confirm that they are correct. You don't. Honestly, I don't get why it's so hard for him to understand. The Bitcoin network is an open financial system that allows participants to store and exchange funds without necessitating any third parties. And the only currency that the Bitcoin financial network deals with is Bitcoin. This means that the price of Bitcoin is a direct result of all the demand from people wanting to enter into the Bitcoin network divided by the supply of Bitcoins available. So, to put it another way, Bitcoin is not a company, it's money. So trying to value it like a business just doesn't make sense. If you want to analyze it, try evaluating Bitcoin based on the qualitative properties that make something money. And if you want to determine what the Bitcoin price should be in the future, you need to try and calculate how much demand and supply there will be at any said time. And right now, the market is saying that there's enough demand to sustain the price of about $100,000 per coin, and that number has been drastically increasing over the past 15 years. You can try and use an appeal to authority by saying that investors like Warren Buffett don't like Bitcoin, but I can also use that same appeal to authority saying that lots of billionaire investors like Bitcoin too. Just look at Larry Fink, Paul Tudor Jones, Mark Cuban, Jack Dorsey, Israel Englander, and Tim Draper, among others. But you know what? I'm not going to do that because using an appeal to authority to decide whether an investment is good or not is not a winning strategy. And all of the Bitcoiners out there that have taken the time to study it and understand how it works, they understand why Bitcoin is on the trajectory to becoming the center of the financial world. And they don't need a billionaire to confirm that they're right. They just have to look at their returns, which are way greater than Warren Buffett's have ever been. And when it comes to the people that haven't studied it, that try to compare it to poop in a bag and think that the government could easily just turn it off, well, with all due respect, their opinions on Bitcoin are just not relevant because they have no idea what they're talking about.
Guys, I hate to be a snob, but I've never met somebody that I respected in the investment world who said they like Bitcoin. Everybody I know who says they like Bitcoin is somebody I would never ever talk to about investing. I just laugh about it. By the way, do you know how many people tell me they're a crypto expert? Like every single person who talks about crypto says they're a crypto expert. That's really odd to me.
Well, Paul, you are being a snob, but that's okay because I'm kind of being a snob here too. And let me say, I've never met a single person that understands Bitcoin that thinks it's a scam. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Every person that I've ever met, the more they understand Bitcoin, the more they realize that it's the greatest financial asset of all time. And whenever a financial expert tells me that Bitcoin is just a scam or is going to zero, do you know what I do? I just laugh about it. I genuinely don't understand how they could feel so strongly about a subject that they understand so little. That's very odd to me.
If you still want to get into it, treat it as a gamble, not an investment. Day trade it. We believe in trading here. Trade it as an asset. That's fine by me.
I need to stop Paul again here. You guys, he's just giving some of the worst advice possible. If you want to get into Bitcoin, I would highly, highly, highly advise not to day trade it. The vast majority of day traders, and this fact goes way beyond Bitcoin and into stocks as well, they get all their profits wiped away with fees and bad bets. A lot of estimates say that 99% of day traders perform worse than the market. And this really hits at one of the core truths about investing, and that's that nobody knows what the price of any asset is going to be tomorrow, next week, or next year.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in fucking circles.
Even me, someone that's raving about Bitcoin, I have no idea where the Bitcoin price is going in the short term. Tomorrow could go up $10,000 or down $10,000. Maybe both. It wouldn't surprise me either way. That said, if you study Bitcoin, then it's incredibly obvious as to where the price of Bitcoin is headed over the long term. And that's up. Way up. So in short, don't listen to Paul here. In my opinion, day trading is like zodiac signs for finance nerds. And unless you're a new age Jim Simons, and if you don't even know who that is, then you're almost certainly not, then day trading is a loser's bet. Most of the time, the people that promote it are just trying to sell you some podunk trading program that can oftentimes lead to financial ruin for the buyer. If their program really worked, then they'd be keeping it secret and making boatloads of money from it. But instead, they're trying to pawn it off on you for some exorbitant fee. So bottom line, Bitcoin is a long-term play that's not a get-rich-quick scheme. And I would avoid day trading it at all costs.
The Bitcoin story is absolutely captivating, but the evidence to me is clear. It's a speculative bubble fueled by manipulation, fraud, and hype. Don't fall for the hype. Understand what you're buying. Thank you for your time.
Wow. I really hope people didn't listen to Paul's video and think that it had any solid investment advice. He gave what was easily one of the worst explanations about Bitcoin that I have ever seen. If I had to grade Paul for his accuracy, understanding, and conclusions about Bitcoin, it was just a flat F. If there was a grade lower than an F, I would probably grade him that. I'm trying to think if there's any redeeming factors in this video. Usually I can think of at least some, but in this case, I'm really not sure there were any. It's clear he hasn't taken the time to learn even the basics about Bitcoin. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to watch him and probably be convinced that Bitcoin is some sort of scam and that they should stay away from it instead of doing some honest research to see what it's all about. And that's really sad because the people that listen to him are really doing themselves a big financial disservice. I'm really curious, did any of you guys actually find him convincing? Or were you all able to see that all of his arguments were essentially trash? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. And if you have a friend that likes Bitcoin, be sure to share it with them. All right, that's it for today, you guys. I'll see you all for the next one. I'm out.